Fuzzy Gloves here. Whoops. And this is another video in the Harmor from the Ground Up tutorial series. Today we're going to be looking at resonance. Pretty simple. So resonance, for our purposes, is just a boost in amplitude wherever your frequency cutoff is. So if your frequency cutoff is right here, it will boost the frequencies at that point. If you turn it up, it'll be at the upper end of your spectrum, your frequency spectrum. So there are a whole bunch of different shapes. We're going to talk about these later in this tutorial. So let's just turn up our resonance and just give it a listen. And you see we don't hear anything. That's because our frequency is all the way at the top. You can kind of see it turned a little bit more red up there, but if we take it down, now you can very clearly see that is our boost in amplitude at that particular point. You can change this by moving the offset. That's what this OFS stands for, offset. So it will be offset a particular value, whatever you set this to. So like below the cutoff of your frequency or above the cutoff of your frequency. So you wouldn't hear it in this case. This also will be impacted by the shape we choose, which we'll talk about in a sec. You see, that's right at the frequency that we've chosen our filter to cut off at. So theoretically, you could just select a custom shape where the filter does nothing except control resonance, but then you have your offset to do that as well. But your offset can only go so far down, so that might be something you desire. They also have, this is the amount of resonance, and they have the width, so the width of your resonance. So we could have a really narrow band of resonance, or we can make it wider. And that is pretty cool. So there's an adapt mode right here, and this changes the bandwidth of your width according to the pitch of the note. So let's say, for example, we have a low note, and we're hitting a low note. Okay, and so we'll turn adapt on, and ideally it will sound the same now. The same amount of resonance is applied is the idea. So as we turn our width up, you see the bandwidth of the resonance introduction is getting narrower as we go down. Anyways, that's the idea. Generally set it by ear. That's technically what it does, though, is it changes the bandwidth of your resonance according to the note's pitch. So that may or may not, it's something you'll notice when you start sound designing, but as far as, I'm going to do this just because I have this vision, I don't think I'd make a move like that. You might, maybe you've got that kind of skill. So we've talked about these things. This also has the octave and hertz mode, so linear and logarithmic, which could actually play a bigger role. This is a situation where I'd probably use it a bit more. So besides the offset, you have this OSC, which just stands for oscillator, and it just introduces a tone right in the middle of wherever you've set your resonance. So you can see the tone if we turn this down. It's right there. It's this big tone. Maybe useful for your resonance. You see it doesn't move from your pitch over here. You can't offset it. Oh, you can't offset it. I just picked the wrong knob. Sorry about that. So that is what these do. Now you have a whole bunch of different shapes to play with now that you know these two. This is basically, if you want your resonance to really have some kick, you can use the oscillator to just introduce it as a tone. You have two of these. So we have a whole bunch of different shapes, which are just different shapes. Because right now it's been introduced as a low pass wherever this is. The frequencies around it get resonance. But we can do things like this Kuberdon. And they'll take on different shapes of resonance being introduced. Again, the adaptive filter may alter this quite substantially. You can hear that with the adaptive filter because we tend to lose resonance as we go up as a function of wherever our frequency is set. So the adaptive filter can correct for that. We have which I believe is the inverse of what we just had. So it acts sort of like a phaser. You can see there's like a hole where it is. So that's kind of an interesting one. Wormhole. So just some interesting shapes that they've pre-made for us. You can make your own custom shapes using the resonance graphs here. So we could do something like this. And you can put down negative resonance, which would just basically make the hole we were seeing earlier. As you can see, it's represented right there. So that is an option. We also have this one. It's noise. It will randomly introduce resonance at random frequencies. And I'll just play a little bit of that for you. All that sort of that is the resonance. As you turn your width up, it gets longer and you get this computer sounding sort of thing. You see, this still functions the same, so you may not want that. It's really interesting. So that's a little bit about what the noise does. Some really interesting opportunities to create some sort of far out there textures. So that's that. Let's just make some sounds and goof off with what we know so far and see what this can sound like. So I finally have a MIDI controller, a little MIDI 25 key piano thing. So I'm kind of excited. And now let's go to just the low pass. So you can just create some really grimy stuff. And I have a track called Symbolic, and in it I use the resonance to create a lot of the bite. You'll know the bass when you hear it. It's very clearly got resonance peaking going on, and I automate this on and off to do that. Let's do some harmonic randomness. And let's distort it. So you can create some stuff like that, or you could go for that's a square wave. So let's see here. Well is always interesting. Let's go for pedestal. So as you see, you can create a lot of interesting sort of talky textures, especially if you move the resonance and the offset at the same time. You get some really interesting, almost like valley type sounds. So whoops, let's try something like this, just something low. And we'll try doing that real quick. I've been working in so many other DAWs recently because of school, and it's so nice to be in a DAW where it's like, oh yeah, you just do this, that, and the other, and it works out. And we'll go ahead and move this too. All right. So we have these things. Whoops, again. Okay. So here's our note. This is the width. I'm actually going to leave this alone. I don't even know why I did this. We have the resonance amount. We'll go ahead and move that up and down. Whoops. Whoops again. Okay, so we have this. And we'll move the filter. Oh my. And we'll move the resonance offset around. We got an interesting sort of thing going on right here. Let's change the filter type to just a regular low pass. Let's change it to wormhole. So anyways, you have a whole bunch of opportunities. We could get a lot, and we could just do more. This would be affected by the advanced tab as well, depending on where your harmonizer is in your order. But yeah, so those are some interesting things. That's what the resonance is. If you aren't familiar with resonance just as a term, it's pretty simple, very useful for creating interesting timbres and textures. I have a video on formants. You might just go on my channel and look up formants. It'll pop up, showing the idea behind formants, which is important for talking. It allows us to sort of have speech. And so using it in your sounds, if you're into bass production, will be a powerful tool for you. And resonance plays an exceptionally large part in that process. If we had two, imagine getting two going, then we could have two separate resonance peaks moving around. It just gets crazy. So again, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments. Subscribe, and have a blessed day.